I recently made a 75-minute long video covering every single Harry Potter character name that was changed in the Norwegian translation of the Harry Potter book series. While I think the full video is worth watching, I wanted to share some of my favorite funny name changes with you in a single video. So let's just jump into it. Poppy Pomfrey is named Pussy Pomfrit. Pussy is probably meant to be a reference to the Norwegian word pussig, meaning weird, and probably not a reference to the English word for cat. Pomfrey is one of the most used words for French fries in Norway, being short for pommes frites. So her full name means weird French fries, or possibly pus inside French fries. Miriam Strout is Miriam Strudel, keeping with the food theme for healers. Aunt Petunia is still Petunia, but the Norwegian name for the Dursley family is Dumling, which sounds very similar to the word dumming, a very tame kindergarten insult which means stupid. Uncle Vernon is Victor, Marjorie is Magen, and Dudley is Dudleif, which isn't really a real name, but follows an old naming convention from the Middle Ages, which a lot of people now find silly, which involves sticking Leif at the end of another name, the Leif part specifically meaning descendant. So technically, his full name means Dud descendant stupid person. Hagrid's name is Gygrid. Gygar are female giants in Norse mythology, and Rid is to ride. So since the name Hagrid comes from being Hagridden, it's actually even more fitting that Gygrid is named after what his father did to help conceive him. Gilderoy Lockhart is Gyldenpris Gullmedal, which means Golden Prince Gold Medal, although it's spelled differently. Neville Longbottom is Nilus Longballa, which means long ball, but very specifically in the way you would refer to a testicle. Like the Norwegian word for a ball is just ball, but if you say balla, that is talking about a singular testicle, while ballar is the plural for both balls and testicles. Now this could be intended as being short for rumpeballar, ass balls, which is what we call ass cheeks, but divorced from the knowledge that the character's original name is Longbottom. Nobody would ever consider that over just thinking that he has long testicles. Malcolm Baddock is Hugo Ballaram. While Ballaram is also a fairly uncommon name in Trinidad and Tobago, I wonder if the name Baddock made Høverstad think of the word bollock, and if that is the reason that he brings up balls yet again through the word balle. Ram can mean a few different things, but for this I think it was intended to mean a hard hit or strike. So this name is basically a reference to a nutshot. Lee Jordan is Laffenstyx. Laffen is an old nickname for Olaf and Olav, so you know, Laffen. Not sure if Styx is from the band or the river though. Dean Thomas is Tommy Ding, which seems like Høverstad just picked names that sounded similar and then flipped them around. Gornuk is Kornuk, corn with a K being the Norwegian spelling of corn. Weird joke, but I think that's it. Hepzibah Smith is Hespetra Smutt. A hespetre is both the Norwegian word for a textile swift and an insult for a difficult woman on par with the English bitch. And hespetre is mixed with the real Norwegian name Petra. Dobby is named Noldus, which is a synonym for idiot. And I have no idea what he did to deserve that. Slytherin is named Smygar, after Smygar, which is either the word for someone who sneaks or for a soundless fart. Elphias Doge is Elphias Dogger, which might tell you something about how he spends his free time, but is probably in reference to the word duggar, meaning to fog up. Mafalda Hopkirk is Mafalda Hopstok. The word hoppestock consists of hoppe, which means jumping, and stock, which means cane. But hoppestock is actually the Norwegian name for a pogo stick. Bertha Jorkins is Bertha Flurp. I think this is literally just a funny sound. Walden McNair is Volmar McKnife. Not in Norwegian, you understand, just McKnife in English. Absolutely perfect. Volme means when something pours out or whirls up. But I would have actually preferred it if his first name had stayed as Valden, because Valden with a V means the violence in certain parts of Norway, being spelled with an O instead of an A in the rest of the country. Having his name be the Violence McKnife would have been the only way to improve this name. Cormac McLagan is Colon McMurk. Even for someone as shitty as Cormac, renaming someone to Colon is pretty harsh, even though the word is usually spelled with a K in Norwegian. But the merk in MacMerk, on the other hand, just means notice or mark. Bob Ogden is Bostolf Åkerman. Bost may be related to the word bust, meaning bristle, the short stiff hair on an animal or brush. The word bustete then came to mean shaggy. Olf is a variation on Ulf, meaning wolf, so his full first name means Shaggy Wolf. While Åkerman is also just a slight variation on the real Netherlands surname of Åkerman with one N. To okke or akke also means to whine and complain in Norwegian, usually involving making the sounds ok and ak. And man is the Norwegian spelling of man. So, Shaggy Wolf Complaining Man. Pansy Parkinson is Petrea Parkassen. Petrea is a genus of evergreen flowering vines, native to the tropical Americas. Parkassen means the parka, as in the hooded winter coat. Newt Scamander is Salamander fisle. Salamander means the same in both languages, and is what both Newt and Scamander refers to anyway. But fisle comes from the Norwegian word firfirsle, which means lizard. So his full name is Salamander Lizard. Dillis der Vent is Dilly Diddly, and Diddly Dee is kind of like a common Norwegian scat line. Harold Dingle is Harball Dingle. Avoiding the obvious pick of Harald, a hårball is the same as a hairball. In combination with Dingle, that brings to mind a dangling hairball, which seems unsavory. Golpalot is Gulpomkapp. Omkapp generally means some sort of race. Kjøromkapp, spiseomkapp, ryddeomkapp, gåomkapp, anything. Omkapp seems to have its origin in the Old Norse kappestrid, meaning cape battle, generally meaning a competition. Means about, so the phrase just means competition about walking or competition about driving, and so on. But in modern times, the phrase is completely linked with speed. The gulp in each name is meant to mean gulp, which is fitting for a potion maker. And that means that the full meaning of the Norwegian name is gulping race. Warty Harris is Vorta Humpel, which is more like Warty Bumpy. For some reason, Morag McDougal is Morag MacDonald, and I'm loving it. Moon is morning, which is an uncommon conjugation of moon. Morning means to expose oneself to moonlight, so you can understand why the word is uncommon. Translating it directly back to English, you'd get mooning, so that may be the actual meaning Høverstad intended. Perkins is Pudelman, which means poodleman. Urquhart is Urkebart. Urke is both a village in Ørsta in Norway and an Old English term meaning irk, to irritate or annoy. Bart means mustache, so I'm clocking the full name as Annoying Mustache. Angus Fleet changed his name to Angus MacAngus and also moved from Peebles to Glasgow for some reason. Egbert the Egregious is Egbert den Extreme, whereas egregious is mostly used to mean extremely bad. His Norwegian title simply means Egbert the Extreme. Humphrey Belcher is Humpertus Rap. Humper is humping, and Rap means burp, making his name Humpingtus Burp. Barnabas the Barmy is Salto den Skjøre. Skjør means fragile, and salto is the same as a somersault, which is presumably what he did involuntarily when the trolls he was teaching ballet to clubbed him to death. And then we had the Norwegian word for muggles. The English word stems from an old Kentish word for tail. Since most of the muggles we see in the first book are meant to be unsympathetic, Høverstad went with the name Gumper. Change the G-O with R-U and you'll get Rumper, meaning asses. The word originates from the Norse Gumpur, and you can still find Gump in dictionaries as a word to describe tail feathers of a bird, even though the word halefjær is much more commonly used. Gump is also the Norwegian word for a singular muggle, alongside with a famous type of Norwegian candy. Quidditch is rumpeldunk. If I were to translate this word directly, I would just go with ass pound. But I read a blog post written by Høverstad where he mentioned that he gave Quidditch the name rumpeldunk because it's an exhausting ball game. But unless it's related to the word rumpeballe again that I mentioned back with poor Neville, I'm not really sure how that's relevant to the name. The golden snitch is called Gullsnoppen. If I ended up using this thumbnail, you might have been thinking, surely not, this has to be clickbait. But no, snoppen is indeed a slang term for a penis. Usually used very playfully, rarely in a sexual manner, more likely to be used by a new parent than by a lover. And it sounds like something rather small too, like the golden snitch. But even looking up snop in online dictionaries, I found both penis and kuk listed as definitions, with kuk being the Norwegian word for cock. So in all seriousness, in the Norwegian version of Harry Potter, Harry is several times chasing the golden cock, and snatches it quite a few times as well. And that's all my favorite funny translations. The full video obviously has a lot more interesting changes, and there's plenty of jokes and fun editing stuff I did there that didn't make sense to include in this video, since it wasn't anything funny about the names themselves. But if you enjoyed this video, you should definitely check that one out as well. Anyway, like, comment, share, subscribe, check out my Patreon, and thanks for watching. See you on the flip side!